We are now weeks away from a potential strike at U.S. East Coast and Gulf ports, which would be disastrous for U.S. and global supply chains. So let's see where the situation stands right now. The main parties involved are the International Longshoremen Association, or the ILA, which represents the port workers, and the United States Maritime Alliance, or the USMX, which represents port ownership. The ILA, which represents workers at the Gulf and East Coast ports, 36 ports specifically, has threatened to strike on October 1st if a new agreement isn't reached before the expiration of the current contract, which ends on September 30th. Talks between the ILA and the USMX most recently broke down over port automation issues, with no apparent progress being made as both sides seem to be at an impasse right now. Now the dispute is over wage increases, with the ILA demanding about a 77% increase over the life of the next contract, retirement benefits, healthcare benefits, and, as mentioned, port automation. I suspect some importers tried to get ahead of this situation, importing early. Some importers as well may be trying to avoid the situation by already diverting cargo to the U.S. West Coast, which is going to lead to more congestion at West Coast ports. So what sort of impact would we expect if the strike does move forward? These ports currently handle about 74,000 containers per day. Assuming an average of $50,000 per container, that's $3.7 billion worth of cargo that would be sitting idle on vessels per day, with no chance of recovering this cargo. It's been estimated that one day of strike would take about 5 days to clear the backlog. A week of a strike would take over a month to clear, and obviously any strike longer than that would be just completely disastrous. And just as we saw with the Panama Canal situation and the Suez Canal crisis, disruption events like this will not just have local effects, but they'll have ripple effects on global supply chains. In this case, West Coast ports will be bearing the burden as importers divert cargo away from East Coast Gulf ports into the West Coast. And as mentioned, this is going to lead to increased port congestion as well as congestion at the rails at those ports. Although there has been quite a bit of saber rattling from the parties involved, East Coast ports have historically a good record of resolving labor disputes. The last work stoppage was 1977, which was a 44-day work stoppage. There's a lot at stake here, but there's also optimism that we will reach a resolution before the end of the month. As you evaluate your own supply chain, some things to keep in mind is shipping early probably won't make a difference now, as any cargo booked now will more than likely arrive to the U.S. after September 30th. If a strike does move forward, any urgent cargo can be pulled aside and shipped air freight. If it's possible, any East Coast bound cargo or interior U.S. bound cargo coming from Asia should be routed via the West Coast if that's an option or a possibility. Likewise, any cargo coming from Europe that has a Western U.S. destination should be routed via the West Coast if that is an option. I'm thinking specifically of LCL cargo that comes from Europe that normally enters into the U.S. at an East Coast port. And worst case scenario, if a strike does move forward, is diverting cargo that would normally come on the East Coast and Gulf ports to the West Coast and transloading on the West Coast, or working with a 3PL on the West Coast that can handle distribution. If any new developments break on the story, I will be sure to let you know. Thanks so much for watching.